I ran out of bandwidth with it, but I wanted to keep running with the ideas I was going with, and also field a direct question that I was asking there. But what I was saying is that if you appreciate, if anyone here, I was referencing the Navajo Elder Teachings channel on YouTube, and who are the Diné people of who are have very strong representation in the Southwest United States. One of the beautiful things I think that for me, I've spent time in I lived in the Mid South for 1 year of high school, junior year. I lived in the Mid South, a suburb of Memphis, like by the headquarters the headquarters of FedEx is in Memphis. So Memphis is like a hub for like pilots. One of the most you have like you have different degrees of like people that are well to do. So you have like so like back you have you have entry level work, like say you're working at like a fast food or something like that. That's entry level. You can do well with some of those fast food establishments, like some form of food service. Not talking about 1099, but an actual job or a regular W-2 job. You oh, my bad. I understand. My bad. A regular. I understand. My bad. Sorry. Um, a regular W-2 job. You you can do well with that. But a lot of times they don't have good benefits. So you might have a W-2 job where you're making like a little bit of decent bank. Like I'd imagine like somewhere between like 20K, and at the upper ranges like maybe 30 to 40K if you're pulling a lot of hours and overtime, and then you might get into 40K, damn near even 50 or 60K if you're a manager. But even whether you're an employee or a manager, it's going to be very unhealthy. You're going to be working very hard, and you sometimes don't even get a break. You just get like downtime like that. Because like where I, for example, like in my where I'm at, a lot of times like some of these places like the convenience stores, the very convenience store that I worked at, what I was referencing in the prior video to this, that my friend he put me up on this cologne called Pi, and then he discovered me at a damn convenience store in the same neighborhood where we grew up at when we had been grown. He's like, man, I know that ain't Pi you wearing, because he had put me up on it, but he didn't sponsor for me to be rocking that stuff like that. But he they can the more established cafes, they can sometimes be more humane and more enjoyable. But I'm just saying is that a cafe is one of the enjoyable things that make life worth living, probably now and in generations and centuries past. Is that cafes are one of the only things we get to enjoy. Before you had clubs, nightclubs, bars, stuff like that, you probably would have had a cafe before any of that or part of any of that. And I would maybe guess that stuff like drinking and stuff like that, it might have stemmed from, there's probably a relationship between bars and cafes that's not well known, but it's one of the things that people get to enjoy. Um, but um, but um, but a convenience store, they also serve coffee like a cafe, and a lot of things like I had a guitar teacher that said without music the world would fall apart. But also music is very well in cafes, so you could also say without cafes, similarly, the world might fall apart. And cafes were equally a venue for music. I would extrapolate or wonder if the modern concert wasn't different than a part of or similar to the trajectory and history of cafes. I would imagine that. But now you also have convenience stores like that. And convenience stores are almost like a modern day accessible urban, and also over the highways and byways. It's like a cafe spring up because you still need a cafe a lot. So you would have a convenience store is almost like an all day, all night cafe, but also in very unseeming places, you would have a convenience store that function like a cafe. But I'm just saying is that sometimes they don't simply give the folks a break. But even at a place like a cafe or a convenience store, both of which normally make one of the most lucrative things you can imagine is a cafe, whether like a chain coffee or a vintage place or a convenience store. They make money hand over fist. When you make buku money, that's called hand over fist. You can't stack it fast enough. You can't count it fast enough yet. But they also can't afford to afford their employees a break. Is that interesting? This you have the profit model, the be all end all, the almighty dollar profit, right? But they're also banking profit better than anybody, right? But they also can't afford to give their employee a simple 15-minute break. that's curious like that. But a little bit diverge with that. But what I was saying is that in New Mexico, so if you go to Albuquerque, New Mexico, you can't have any experience of Albuquerque without appreciating the Sandia Mountains, because the Sandia Mountains sit right there in the eastern part of Albuquerque. It lines the eastern flank of Albuquerque is lined with the Sandia Mountains that are part of the Rocky Mountains that go all the way from Canada to Chile. But if you go to the very top of the Sandia Mountains, you can actually find fossils up there. Like you don't even have to do digging. You just you take the tram, or they have some very beautiful tourist destinations above the Sandia Mountains in Albuquerque, and you go way the hell up there. Albuquerque itself is already higher than Denver. I think Denver is a mile high city, and I'm not sure if Albuquerque or Denver is higher altitude, but Albuquerque is very high altitude, and it's excellent for like training marathon runners because it has rare air. That means fine, thin air. So it makes you very tough. If you're physically viable in Albuquerque, you're physically viable damn near anywhere. You're damn near a Sherpa at that point if you're an athlete in Albuquerque. But Albuquerque is high enough, but you go to the top of the mountain even higher. And what are fossils doing up here? You can actually see sea creatures, ancient sea creatures and fossils. Just pick it up right there in the rock like that, all over the place, because it had been the bottom of an ocean. So that's interesting that the actual very Dene people who are from or indigenous to the southwestern United States. Oh, the reason I was talking about different parts of the country is because the whole country of America has beautiful culture, but one of the most beautiful languages that you can experience is the southwestern United States, both with the Chicano, Tejano, but also Native American and African American, European American, all that converge in the Southwest. But a lot of both the native and the indigenous, because I think when you speak of native and indigenous people of the Americas or of Mexico, of the U.S. or Mexico, those people overlap before arbitrary political boundaries. Like an example of that is the word Diné. So like the word Diné refers to the Navajo people, but the word Navajo, I think that's a Spanish word, and so that would speak to the influence and the appraisal in the contact of the Spaniards, but also the lines of borders. Like you have the Alamo, that was about just defining the border with Texas, and then also you have like the Spanish influence that would have to do with the borders of like Khalifa in California and Mexico, but also New Mexico and Arizona. But those borders were interchangeable and a little bit arbitrary since they were designed by human beings. But the people themselves would have been familiar, but also traveling back and forth. So you can't actually isolate in the strictest sense what's Hispanic, that is a native indigenous to the region of Mexico and the Southwest, and the native people of the United States geographical region. That's arbitrary to siphon those people according to modern political boundaries. But hey, it was um, thanks for anyone for rocking tough with me. If you had thanks for anyone for rocking tough with me. If you had stayed in the live, but I didn't realize that my charger had fell out the wall. But I'm attempting a lot of different ideas, but I'm trying to bring them together. So what I was saying is that I lived for like one year in high school in Memphis, and I was just talking a little bit about different tiers of of income. So I was saying is that you have like entry level work, like say service job, and a lot of those jobs, they can be bankable, but you have to actually do yourself a little bit of disservice in terms of the hours you would work, the rigors you would work, and some of the lack of benefits in an entry level job. Then above entry level, you have things that we call like a professional. And usually when something is called professional, it doesn't mean that you're that very, very good at it, or that you're or that it is easy or not easy. But normally what is actually being conveyed by professional is a little bit of the nuance of the liability and the dangers that would come with it, because anything you do for work, anything you do at all in life or not do, has some danger in it. But by be a professional, like say a CDL. A CDL is one of the most simple and direct, but not easy, but simple and direct ways to become a professional. Because by the time that you're a CDL, that is a professional license, it's a privilege. It's called a privilege. When you get your clearance to be a CDL, that's called your driving privileges, but it's a privilege. But sometimes your training to become a CDL is that you have to study a lot of like laws and regulations, but then also when you perform the duties of a CDL, you're also bound by like a pre-trip inspection of a vehicle. That pre-trip is very significant both for your own safety and those that you would transport, but also for liability, so that heaven forbid if something were to go wrong while conveying oneself or others with with a commercial vehicle, whether you as passengers or like civilian bystanders, pedestrians, other road users, the pre-trip, the training to become a CDL, and what you're expected in terms of performance, but also the pre-trip that you perform daily. It's an actual binding agreement. So you can't take a you can't take a commercial grade. All right, stepping back in. I had lost the the adapter. But what I'm saying is that uh of the entire United States, one of the places where you consistently meet indigenous people would be the southwestern United States. But the very southwestern United States it's desert, it's desolate. But the reason it is desolate is because it had been the seat of an ocean, is what I'm saying. And so from that standpoint, it's unique that the Dene people would say that we come from a blue world, we emanate from, and you can appreciate that most parts of the human body go all the way back to the ocean. And actually the body itself, so you could almost say that we're in ocean suits. Like some people would say that human beings are a meat suit, but a better way would say to be an ocean suit, because I think that the pH, the balance of bases, and so most things have a counterpart. One thing that's very fundamental to the human body is acid and base. Like for example, like water, right? One of the reasons I think that water is healthy for us is one of it is that the polarity of it. Like there's two type of bonds that chemicals can do. They can have a covalent bond or a polar bond. A covalent bond is like, say you have a partner, right? You have a someone in your life, right? You're spending time with them, but now they're beginning to leave things with you. Anything that a human being gives you that you can touch is very deep, because we were communal in the past, and I think that the only viable, workable relationships that we had with other human beings presently and in the past, you're now presently, but especially in the past, you were not viable outside of a community. You would be one when they say, "Damn, is there really such a place as called hell?" When you're outside the graces and favor and mercy of your fellow man and woman, and even child, you are now damned, because you're not viable to live, but also you don't get to you're gonna have to suffer as you cease to have your needs met. You're gonna be suffering that whole time, and that will happen when you're not inside of the what's afforded to you by other people. And even if you were able to fashion survival in the wilderness alone to your own devices, you would have to have some kind of training and initiation to do that came from other people. So we are simply not viable outside of communities, but also we're not viable inside of communities without real bartering, without believable, equitable bartering, sharing. And that's especially conveyed over effects, like anything physical that you can touch. According to Mickey Royal, a former pander, man of leisure, he would say that that when somebody would give you anything that you can touch, you ostensibly can have any degree of affinity and reciprocity with that is relationship with that person, if they would so much as give you something that you can lay your finger on, because that's a certain threshold that's been breached. If someone were to touch your body, that's a significant threshold that's been transcended or realized. But also, if somebody gives you something you can physically touch on a primal level, that's a threshold and a bond and reciprocity that's very deep. And so likely I extrapolate that in human communities, when somebody would give you anything really concrete, that's that's very significant. And it's interesting that you spend that much money to go to college and they don't give you anything that you can touch. Now, one thing that may be worse than giving you something you can touch would be to give you garbage. So I don't know what that means in older pre-civil times. If a community member gave you garbage, you had worked this hard, and they give you like a negative value of thing you can touch. But these universities that give you garbage because the diploma is probably not worth as much as the paper that it's printed on, especially if someone ain't willing to hire you with it. But uh, bartering would have been very significant in the past, but also still at present. Um, but uh, um, but so but it's appreciated that we come from a blue world, and now we're in a yellow world. And so if you, I was talking about like about training your awareness. So normally, like certain colors correspond with certain parts of the human experience, but also communication. So like, I think that the color yellow is very significant. You normally don't see yellow that doesn't have meaning. And if any color specifically in an environment had meaning, if I had to guess, it would be yellow, overwhelmingly. But the exception also proves a rule. But then other colors have certain meaning too that you don't normally think about. Like, I think that the color red is very transcendent, right? So, like, say you would see red in nature, right? A lot of times, by the time that you see red leaves are part of fall. That's when the summer is dying, is giving way. The word for like nowadays